Hey Emma,
Yes, Madeline.
when do you say your H's when you're singing the ABCs?
I don't know. When do you say it?
Before your eyes. Hello, and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I am your very alphabetical host, Madelyn.
I'm your numerical host, Emma.
Thanks for tuning into the show. That's relevant. There's a ton of numbers in near.
Is there?
Well, in the latest title, I mean.
Oh, I guess so. In the latest title, sure.
But yeah, thanks for tuning in. This week on our show, we're going to be talking about Drakengard. And I almost said, and Talk This. So that's how checked in I am today. And Before Your Eyes. Our new game, Before Your Eyes. We were going to do Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo Olympic Games 2020. But that actually came out in 2019. So it does not qualify as a new game under the Talk This standards.
Darn. They played video game music for the opening ceremonies.
I know.
Which people are surprised about, and I was like, that just seems like the obvious choice.
Well, it was a last-minute replacement. I'm sure you saw that.
Oh, I didn't.
Okay, we'll talk about this off the line, but the composer who was going to be doing it until 4 days ago is a bad dude.
Wasn't he for the Paralympics, I thought?
Oh, maybe I'm mixing things up then.
I'm pretty sure the composer was going to do something. That composer was going to do something for the Paralympics, which made
that's
it worse.
Really worse.
However, they did lead with Dragon Quest, whose composer is a war crime denier. So there's
nice. That. I did. I told Clickbait Boyfriend about this. I was like, man, they played the Olympics Coliseum music at the Olympics. And he was like, oh, that would be funny, like having misheard me. And I was like, no, they did.
They did it. But I was going to say they played, connecting to our first game a little, they played some Nier music as well. And I think I saw this on Twitter because I think I absorbed it from somewhere, but someone was like, they really shouldn't be playing Nier music. They should play Drakengard 1 music to really hammer home how terrible this event is.
But Nier takes place after the plague, right?
I guess. Oh, you're right. There is a disease running rampant in Nier, so
just saying. A lot of thematic appropriateness pathways here with these games.
You see, still, Nier's music is pleasant. Drakengard 1's music is deeply unpleasant.
Well, that's as good a segue as any from my bad joke about, Mario and Sonic to Drakengard, aka Dragon Dragoon, which is just, what a silly name for a game that is just not silly even a little.
Yeah, Drakengard, it doesn't even make any more sense or mean anything different, but it definitely feels like a better name to market it in the West.
Dragon Dragoon sounds like an arcade racing game to me.
It does kind of, you're right. Just the drag part, I guess.
Yeah.
Dragon.
Something about it gives me the vibe of you're racing and maybe you get to shoot dragons as you go. Like a Panzer Dragoon kind of, but a drag race version.
That'd be cool. Someone should make that.
Here I am, just giving out free game ideas.
Where's my Drakengard kart racing spinoff?
Don't say, I will do it. Don't say that.
God.
Anyway, okay, so the original Drakengard, 2003 for the PS2 from Cavia, which Wikipedia on the page will have you know is a rodent, but is also a game studio.
Yes, they're a game studio. They made...
Or formerly is a game studio, I guess.
Yes, formerly a game studio. They made Drakengard, Drakengard 2, and then the original Nier was their last game before closing.
And all of them published by, well, were they Square in 2003? Or was this post-Enix?
I don't know. And that's actually not true, because Drakengard 2 was distributed by Ubisoft internationally.
Okay, well, yeah,
Fun fact.
There's some different international publishers, whatever, fine.
I just find that fact so funny.
Well, I love that Drakengard 3 is with the Deadly Premonition people.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, we're just working with anybody.
That basically is how the series has went, yeah. It's just like, okay. Until Automata actually hit it with a developer who is good at making games.
So, Drakengard, if you're in the West, you might be less familiar with Drakengard than you are with the Nier series, which is a spin-off of Drakengard. I feel like that happens. I can't think of as many Western games that have like spin-offs that have taken on a life of their own, in the same way as some of these big JRPGs.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like franchisey stuff
in
the West, right? I think like The Walking Dead, for instance, the comics versus the several TV shows versus the video games and stuff. I guess it's sort of similar.
Sure, multimedia-wise, for sure. I just mean to say, even just within video games, we talk about Persona, we talk about Nier, we talk about any of these kind of like things that if you were in the West, you would be forgiven for not even knowing that they are spin-off series.
Yes.
Something else.
Nier is the consumer-friendly version of Drakengard.
Well, Drakengard 2 is the consumer-friendly version of Drakengard.
That's fair. That's true.
But yes, that's true.
So that's why you might be more familiar with Nier.
So Drakengard, the whole set of series takes place in this kind of, Northern European fantasy world, Midgard. Not to be confused with Final Fantasies. Midgard.
Or isn't Midgard the actual thing in Norse myth where humans live?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Not that either. There's no Norse gods in this.
Probably more inspired by that, though. Taken from that, likely.
Yeah.
So in this world, we have these, like, magical beings called the seals that aren't seals-like creatures. That would be funny, though.
That would be funny.
They are just big, like, orc.
That would be good.
Would not be, like, totally out of place, I feel like.
No, I don't think so.
Although, is there such a thing as totally out of place? But that and the goddess of the seal kind of protect the world from the Watchers, who are evil beings who want to destroy humans. And so we have this kind of, like, balance in the world of not wanting to let the Watchers destroy the world. Mm-hmm. Also, there are dragons and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this kind of, like, medieval fantasy world, basically. With human wars, and also trying to not get killed by they're not gods exactly, but, like, the gods things.
The key part of Drakengard, especially the first one, but also 2 and 3, everybody sucks, and everything sucks.
There you have it.
It's kind of the key, I think that's the key ethos to understand about it.
And it's, this is something that's come up across a lot of different side quests in various perspectives for us. The idea of how do you reconcile the hero who in gameplay is like a mass murderer and just like unrepentant mass murderer with a story where presumably they're the hero. And Yoko Taro and co. decided, well, you don't really. You reconcile it by everyone is awful.
Yep.
In every possible way.
Yep.
And in many ways that seemingly did not make it to the West. With Drakengard.
Yeah, a lot of this whole series has been like man, the Western version's kind of different, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, none more so than Nier, I guess, but Drakengard was pretty, I guess censored is probably the right way. Edited. Censored makes it sound like there was some power from on high making them do it, but I don't think that's necessarily true.
Well,
but heavily edited for the international release.
Clearly no one was paying any attention to this game. So, Emma, I think you've told this story maybe on our game conventions episode before, right?
Something, yeah. I feel like I've told this, yeah.
But, like, they were worried. They had already gotten a lot of feedback from, like, the, whatever, producing committee or something internally that was like, they have to make edits to this kind of dark story that we'll go into in a little bit. And so the team was a little worried they weren't gonna, the game just wasn't gonna get published anywhere, basically. Mm-hmm. And so they pitched it to Sony at E3, but E3 is such a mess and so exhausting that Sony was just like, yeah, do it. And didn't even look at the pitch. And
apparently they were one of the last ones that day, I think, so... That's the key.
Yeah, hot tip.
Always go close to last.
That's something, it's like with auditions in theater, it's like, no, absolutely not. End of the day, everyone is so burned out, they are not paying attention to you. Although, I don't know, maybe you're last and you'll stick in their mind. Also a possibility. Apparently in games, though, other way around. Hit them when they are so exhausted from last night's 4 a.m. bender that... they don't even notice what the game is about, and they say, that sounds good, let's do it. Or at least that worked in, like, 2000.
Yeah. I will, like, Drakengard, before we get into the plot, and before you do your lore corner, let's keep this a PG-13 podcast, so let's not get into some of the gorier details, maybe. But I do think Drakengard is very much like... I mean, it's one of Yoko Taro's earliest games, and it really just feels like he was like, here's all ideas that I have. Let's put them in and see what happens. And it very much feels like someone who's got a lot of ideas and is smart's, like, first project when they don't know how to do anything. Is my impression of Drakengard. It
also feels like, and obviously we would never come up with something quite this dark and twisted, I don't think, but, you know, plenty of things I've read have been like, okay, they thought of the combat, at least, as a hybrid between Ace Combat and Dynasty Warriors. And it's like, you know, I can't say, like, this is the game that I would have come up with, combining those two games, exactly. But it does feel a little bit, like, it has some of the unhinged energy of a pretty bad Talk This mashup.
Yeah.
Where there's, like, one part of it that's like, oh, okay, like, that's kind of neat. It's like, oh, okay, like, there's aerial combat and ground combat. Or, oh, it's set in a medieval Europe fantasy.
Yeah.
And then we're just like, oh, and here's a bunch of other things we grabbed from the other games.
Yeah.
All of them. I was reading about this, I was like, I feel like we and Yoko Taro would work well together.
The difference with this is part of the inspiration was making it stand out against stuff like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest by making it different from them, by trying not to take from them. And part of that that's part of the reason why it is so, like, sort of dark and mature, is to make it sort of stand apart from those series for someone looking for something a little bit more, like, twisted, I guess.
Well, there's definitely some inspiration from some of the, like, bloodier, like, manga series, too, that I was reading
sure,
about.
Yeah. I mean, everything is influenced by Berserk, so... And there's definitely some... We just did this in Umurangi Generation. I always feel like a tool saying there's definitely some Evangelion in this, too.
I need a supercut of that. Will you listen to all of the podcast episodes and every time you say that?
I don't think I've said it that much. It just has come up several times recently.
Just make sure to pick a game for next time, too, where you can say it 3 times in a row. We'll make a reel.
Good. Yeah.
So anyway, Madelyn's Lore Corner. Here we go. It's not really Madelyn's Lore Corner. It's just telling you what the game is about. We're 15 minutes into the show. It's about time. So, I might have already said this, but it's a mixture of, like, action, hack and slash, and also aerial combat, like, shooter thing. Of course, with RPG, like, elements and skills and stuff. And so... if you've played Automata, I feel like I can sort of see like where the two gameplay styles of Automata kind of evolve from in that.
That's part of what makes these games so interesting, right? Is you can look at Drakengard and be like, oh, I see where all this stuff came from in later games. It's just so unrefined and has become more refined.
Yeah. So here we are, we're in this world. During the time of Drakengard, there's a war going on between the Union and the Empire. And of course the Empire is looking to be winning, because you can't be an Empire in fiction. I'm sorry. I mean, you probably shouldn't be an Empire in the real world either, but I won't.
Yeah. Empires are bad. There you go.
You know, I mean, Roman Empire was probably bad if you were living in it, but you know, Roman Empire's pretty dope. I can get behind the Roman Empire.
Okay.
Removed enough.
Sure.
But yeah, Empire in fiction, and probably all the time in the world. I'm sure the Roman Empire was bad too. I mean, it fell, so it was bad. But yeah, you just can't be an Empire in the game. Okay, it's just bad. And so in this game, you play as Kame. You're a former, deposed prince of the Union side, because of course you're the hero here. And the Empire has killed your parents, and you're out for vengeance. And right at the beginning of the game, you're wounded in battle protecting your sister. But this is not Demon Slayer wholesome, people, so hold it together. And when, you're gonna die unless you make a pact with a dragon, named Angelus. And that's something else that we can do in this magical, Drakengard, Midgard, is that, you know, humans and animal mythical creatures can make pacts. Kind of like an Ursula situation. I mean, literally in this case, kind of like an Ursula and Ariel from The Little Mermaid situation. Yeah. But where, you know, you trade something in return for kind of having the power of the creature, right? Yeah. So in this case, Kim gives up his voice, which is, again, this really just feels like Yoko Taro being like, okay, so we have silent protagonist who kills a lot of people. How do I justify that? When in fact, no one was asking you to. But here we are. Certainly in 2003, no one was like, please explain to me why the protagonist is silent. When did Jack 2 come out? Maybe he saw Jack 2 and he was like, he talks now, so I have to explain the silence.
No, I don't think so.
I think Jack 2 is after this. Anyway.
I think so too.
So we also learn that Kim's sister, Furii, is the goddess of the seal, right? Yes. And so we don't have to just protect her because he's your sister, and brothers in media have to protect their sisters. Yeah. But also because, you know, if all of the seals are destroyed, the goddess of the seal is the only thing standing between humanity and destruction. And so you do a bunch of stuff to do that, and things get weird. And also, all of your traveling companions are messed up. Because, again, we're just justifying, like, you know, existing in this world, and that, you know, being anyone who could kill all of these people has to be insane. Anyone who is, like, involved as a video game party member just has to be insane, because otherwise how could you be killing all of these people? And obviously this is something that this series kind of grapples with across all of the different iterations. And you can definitely see the evolution in those stories if you look at this and you look at, like, Automata, from, oh, you have to be insane to kill this number of people, like, in, like, horrifying ways, to, like, maybe there are ways that you can be insane that aren't, I don't know, cannibalism, which appears, or pedophilia, which is at least strongly implied, or, incest. Like, name a thing that you wouldn't expect to see make it past the ESRB, and it will be there.
Flying babies.
A climactic rhythm game.
Yeah.
That is the thing that made me be like, this is a Talk This mashup. So we were like, oh crap, like we have to work Guitar Hero in here somewhere. Modern day Tokyo rhythm game. Done.
In some ways, as weird as this is to say, I do think, like, Drakengard is kind of like Yoko Taro at his, like, most idealistic in thinking that, like, to do awful things, you have to be a monster of a person.
Yeah.
And in later games, you see him come to realize, like, that's not necessarily true, right? Like, Nier is all about how, like, you like Nier, you like his friends, you know? Like, they're good people in a lot of ways, but also they do really awful things. And it's not necessarily because they're incredibly messed up like they are in Drakengard. Which is a more pleasant experience, but kind of a more pessimistic view of the world in some ways.
Now, if you're less familiar with the Drakengard series, you might be wondering why we've been talking about Nier so much.
Right, that's true.
And so that's because, and I think we sort of hinted this, but I'll go ahead and put it out there, because this game is all about being very blunt.
Yeah.
So Nier is a spin-off from Drakengard. So there's Drakengard 2, which is so it's sort of a direct sequel, but Drakengard, and again, if you've played any of the Nier games, like, this will be something that's sort of familiar to you. Drakengard is all about, like, different timelines, different endings.
Yes.
Right? And not different endings like, well, I assume anyway. I'm less familiar with how the different endings of Draken, but it seemed in reading them that it's like the endings of Nier, in that the first ending is not really an ending, you just keep going.
With Drakengard, it's slightly more like different timelines. I would say with the Nier ones, like, it's either like a different version or you're getting more context in the different endings.
Right.
But in Drakengard, it's literally like in the second ending, you do something different during the game, and it leads to different events, basically.
Got it. So anyway, multiple endings and multiple timelines are a big thing in Drakengard. Yes. And so Drakengard 2, like, is a direct sequel, but they've now sort of, like, retcons to be like, it's its own timeline thing.
Yeah, Drakengard 2 is mostly based off ending A of Drakengard, with a couple of differences to make its plot work. So it's like it's like a sequel to ending A-ish, I guess.
And then Nier is based on, is it ending 4 or ending 5?
Ending E, ending 5.
Ending 5, that's what I thought. Wherein, yeah, we have this, well, that's the Tokyo rhythm game ending.
Yes.
But we have, Nier takes place far in the future, after there's been, like, a plague, or in the midst of a plague that is wiping out humanity.
So, spoilers, but basically you end up, like, bringing, like, the mother beast or whatever it's called.
There's no way to
it's
play
like
Drakengard, so I don't feel that bad. Like, you can't.
That's true. It's fine. I wouldn't even recommend playing Drakengard, to be honest. If they remake a Drakengard, they should probably remake Drakengard 3 so it doesn't run like a slideshow, and should just leave Drakengard alone. But you bring, like, the mother beast, like this huge bald lady thing, somehow through a portal that brings you to modern day Tokyo, and you have a big rhythm battle with her. And when you win, it crumbles into, like, salt, and also the Tokyo Air Force, like, shoots down Angelus and Kaim. And as a result of that, They bring magic basically into the real world, the Tokyo world, as well as the planet getting like covered in salt, which has like bad effects on the world. And there's all this lore, and generally my opinion of Drakengard lore is that people get way too into it, and honestly it doesn't super matter. Like, clearly it's there and thought through, but it doesn't really matter to each individual story more than is explained to you. And I think sometimes people get too into it and, like, don't appreciate the stories that are there without, like, being like, but the lore, how does this connect? It's like, who cares, honestly? Yeah.
It is sort of tough with a series like this that does have very expansive lore, but is functionally unplayable. I mean, Drakengard's 1 and 2 are for the PlayStation 2.
Yes.
Which, look, okay, I know you're out there, like, you have your PS2, whatever, like, good for you. But the PlayStation 2 is not an accessible platform for very many people. And then I think, and this is where I admit it, people, I didn't play, I mean, I played Nier Automata, so that's my, like, get out of jail free card for this week. But I didn't play other games this week because Drakengard, I was going to have to, like, download it from PSN, and it takes forever to download anything from the PSN on PlayStation 3, and I wasn't even sure it was going to be there. So, forgive me.
Yes, Drakengard 3 is on PlayStation 3, but honestly, I don't recommend playing it there either. Apparently, you can get some, like, good emulation things that makes it actually run functionally, but it, on the PS3, I don't usually care about frame rate, but it's literally, like, I've seen people try to play it, and it's a slideshow in combat. It's, like, really bad.
So it's tricky, especially given that the game of this that exploded in the West, Drakengard is relatively popular in Japan.
Yeah,
my understanding.
I was really curious about the existence of Drakengard 2, which is not a Yoko Taro game, by the way. He had very limited involvement with it. I think he directed some of the CG cutscenes.
Which you can tell because there's some color in
it. And I was like, okay, but, like, what a weird, like, why would you bother? You know, like, it's like this weird, really dark game, Drakengard. Why would you be like, oh yeah, we'll just continue the series, but put someone new on it? Because it's like, is it a marketable name? But apparently Drakengard 1 sold pretty well, which was surprising to me, because I was like, I really was not expecting it to.
It was pretty well reviewed relative to the other two. And, but yeah, they explicitly did not think there was going to be a sequel, and that's why they made multiple endings. And then, of course, you come back to the sequel, and it's like, oh, F. Like, we gotta pick one, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's tricky, right? Because, you know, it has this expansive lore, and it's an interesting universe, but then the game that really got worldwide attention is Automata, which, whatever, I'm sure, I guess, I mean, Emma doesn't seem to think so, but I'm sure is richer if you are familiar with the lore.
I think it's richer if you're familiar with Nier. I guess there's, like, some neat trivia if you're interested in Drakengard, is really my opinion of it.
Yeah. And so that's why it makes a lot of sense that they just recently remade the original Nier. But you're kind of in a hard place, I feel like, even if you're saying, like, okay, people like Nier now, even though Nier really has had some astonishingly, like, reviews when it came out in the, like, it's like, oh, you probably wish you hadn't written that now, kind of reviews when it came out in the West.
It did kind of come out in, like, a fervor of, like, Japanese games are weird in reviews, I think, so.
And look, Nier is a weird game, but
it's true.
The framing of some of it is just like, ooh, okay.
Yeah.
So, like, I get why they remade that, and of course, like, it's neat that they were able to kind of add to that and continue the game's conversations with each other through new endings. But Drakengard feels impossible to remake unless you're gonna really change it.
Yeah. I think Drakengard 3 is a viable option if they want to test Drakengard in the West again. Drakengard 3 is a prequel to Drakengard. Right. The ending that leads into Drakengard 1 is not even included in the game. It's in, like, side novelizations, which is very funny to me. But Drakengard 3 has a lot of, like, the controversial subject matter and weird stuff going on, but it's also, like, very irreverent about it. Like, there's lots of, like, fourth wall breaking moments, and, it's got all the main characters are, like, colorful ladies doing violence. People love that. So I think that one's probably more viable in terms of, like, but it is, like, even a step weirder than Nier is, like, so, yeah. That one's on PS3, if you would like to try it.
Maybe we're ready for that, right? I feel like everyone, at least in games world, has bought into the, like, Yoko Taro is so weird hype enough that, like, maybe they could do it. But I also don't know why they would want to do that now. This does feel like a situation, and I don't feel like this is true of any of the, like, other kind of, like, spin-off-y series that have taken on a life of their own that we've talked about. Like, Shin Megami Tensei definitely still, like, even if they, haven't made a new one in a while, it definitely still exists as a series.
Well, the new one's coming out.
Well, I know that. Yeah. But even if they've made a bunch of Personas in the meantime.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't see why you would, unless you want to, like, reboot it, which maybe you do, I don't see why you would go back to that when Nier is what's caught on, and which, like, is just less, I hate to use the word problematic, because of course, like, you can make games about this. I don't mean to say, like, you can't make games with controversial subject matter, but, like, if the spin-off is working and you still get to have people with their butts out, like, why wouldn't you just go with that?
Apparently they're working on a new game that I think is unrelated to the series, so good for him.
Well, as long as they work in the Fall Guys lore, it's good with me.
Yeah, true. Anyway, last fun fact. I think I knew this before, but today I learned again that somehow Yoko Taro has trained the West to say his name in proper Japanese order, because Taro is his first name and Yoko is his last name.
I was confused by that as I read the Wikipedia. I was like, why have they gone with Yoko? Like, that's such a strong choice.
No, that's his last name. Somehow he's taught us the correct way to say his name.
It sounds better that way.
Yeah.
It's got a better rhythm to it.
Does it sound better, or are we just used to it, is the question.
Taro Yoko? I don't know. He's, like, not really a human. It's in the same way as it's, like, we don't use Madonna's last name, right?
I
Yoko
guess
Taro
so.
is just, like...
Yoko Taro.
It's his, like, robot edition.
Anyway, as always, I recommend watching the Drakengard 3 interview where he speaks as a sock puppet and talks about how the war in Iraq influenced him.
So,
it's a good time.
Ready to move on to Before Your Eyes?
I'm ready.
Don't let Yoko Taro, don't let him have this technology. That's my first thing here, is this mashup is going to be, like, interesting, because I just can't, like, you can't give this to him.
When I picked this last time, I was like, this is sure gonna be a mashup.
Oh, it's gonna be so hard. There's so much going on in Drakengard. Before Your Eyes is like, there's one thing.
Yeah.
It's Tetris all over again.
Well, tell us about Before Your Eyes. And this is a pretty short game, so probably spoilers will come.
Yeah. So, Before Your Eyes, I'll try not to spoil too much specifics. I will spoil, because I've spoiled for myself, a theme.
Okay.
I'm not going to get into the details of what exactly happens in the game, but it's a memory game. So there's an aspect of that is going to get... Anyway. Before Your Eyes Came out in April from Goodbye World Games, which is just a couple of college friends. It's my impression. For Windows, which I was bummed about. So I was like, this is one I was interested in playing. But I guess...
Gotta get a Steam Deck.
This game would not play on Steam Deck, right? Steam
That's
Deck
true.
Can have a webcam?
Technically, you can use the mouse and keyboard as well. Although all the reviews I read were like, it's good that there's this option, but it does kind of entirely, fundamentally change the pacing of the game. So.
Right. So, what Emma is referring to, you might be thinking like, oh, it's a PC game. Why would I not use the mouse and keyboard? Is this a WASD situation? Look at me. I know what that is.
Wazda.
No, that's a type of car.
Wazda.
So in Before Your Eyes, assuming that you can get it calibrated and working, which it seemed like some reviewers had no trouble with and other reviewers simply could not do, which makes me wonder, should they have just wiped off their webcam? What's the situation?
Does kind of seem like that.
It's like, mine gets smudgy too, but I just wipe it off. So basically Before Your Eyes runs on eye tracking technology, which is super dope.
Yeah.
It came out of an intro to game design class where they were like, this would be cool, and then they did it. And so basically, you are Benjamin Bryn, and you've recently passed away, and you're with the ferryman. So, big year for Charon, I feel like.
Yeah. We love Charon lately.
Cause we did Spiritfarer and this and Hades.
Yeah.
Big year to be a Styx dude. So the ferryman is taking you to the afterlife, but it's still up for grabs whether you're going to be going to paradise or not. And so the ferryman, look, the ferryman in the other two games suck. That's not true. Ferryman in Hades is lovely, except when you steal his stuff.
Which fair.
Yeah, he's fair, for sure. But this ferryman is way more on your side, I feel like, than the other ones. In that, he's hoping to be able to convince, our judgment person at the end to get you into paradise. And so you're gonna, share your memories of your life with the ferryman so he can come up with, a good pitch for you. He's, your ideal lawyer type here. And so, in some ways this game is basically a visual novel sort of situation, where you get to look at your memories, but as the ferryman tells you, they're going to disappear when you blink. You can interact with them by looking at different things and to sort of change how you interact with things by looking at different areas on the screen. But you get to sort of see Benjamin move through life before he died. It's inspired, apparently, by Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, which is sort of dope and makes a lot of sense when you get to the spoilery parts that we'll talk about. But of course, Death of a Salesman, if you're not familiar with Arthur Miller's herb, how have you not read Death of a Salesman, person listening to that? How did you get through high school?
I don't know if I've read Death of a Salesman.
Really?
I mean, I've read A View from the Bridge, obviously.
No, that
but...
I guess I went through a phase where I read all of them, but I feel like we were assigned Death of a Salesman at some point. Maybe I'm wrong now.
Maybe I watched the movie in college in that weird theater honors class I took my first semester.
Right.
Or maybe I read part of it. I don't think I've read the whole Death of a Salesman.
Well, for Emma's benefit, in Death of a Salesman, Willie Loman, the aforementioned salesman, who, spoiler alert, at the end does die.
Whoa!
He's a salesman, and he used to be an okay salesman, but now he's not very good anymore, and he has two sons who never really became the like men they were supposed to be, despite showing promise in high school, because one of them was never nurtured by their father and the other one's a failure, and one of them caught the dad cheating at some point. Anyway, there's a lot of memory that happens in Death of a Salesman, of how Willy Loman remembers his life and remembers his sons and like remembers their past, and so you can see well, you could see how some people who came up with this in a college game design class might also have been in like an English class where they had to read Death of a Salesman at the same time, and we're like,
true.
Oh, this is a game. Death of
to
a
be
Salesman,
fair, it does work really
great.
well, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to use eye tracking technology, this is something that makes a lot of sense in terms of like using that and making it thematically appropriate.
So, the light spoilers here, which you can probably skip ahead no more than 5 minutes and hear the rest of the episode. I don't think we're going to talk too much about the spoilery part here. So, partway through the game, so Benjamin is like a music prodigy growing up, has relatively supportive, if sometimes harsh, parents. And in the memories, I think his mom seems to die, right?
Yes, his mom dies.
And that throws him off, but he eventually kind of overcomes and perseveres and is like gonna succeed, seemingly.
Yeah, more he quits music and eventually decides to do painting instead. And by becoming so successful at painting, like his mother is also discovered for her musical talents posthumously. Throwback to when I pronounced that posthumously for like the first 6 years I knew that word.
Nice. It is after humor.
You're right.
So eventually though, like we find out in the game that if you're not going to get into paradise, you're going to get turned into a seagull. Mm-hmm. I wonder if they were reading Chekhov too. That would not be funny. Not that anyone gets turned into a seagull in Chekhov. What is this, Drakengard? But, you know.
Fun fact! People do get turned into birds in the Drakengard series. Or more specifically, birds get turned into really effed up humans.
Oh, good.
And then they turn back into birds.
That is
anyway, continue.
That is basically the plot of the seagull. Anyway, what was I even saying? Right. So if you don't get into paradise, you're going to be a seagull on the boat. And we find out that the seagulls are like the liars, so the people who lied. And eventually the ferryman figures out that Benjamin is lying as well. That his memories past a certain point have not been real ones, that they've been made up ones to impress the ferryman. And so he asks Benjamin to tell the real story. And so we learn that that's not how things went down. And instead, Benjamin got sick and died before really accomplishing anything that he wanted to accomplish.
I think it's neat how it does that, in that it brings you back to memories that, like, you'd seen before, but you probably blinked. Yeah. Before it got to, like, the part, like memories that, like, come out and you're like, this seems like a weird memory, but then you probably blinked before it got to that part, but then they bring you back to it and he's like, really don't blink, like, keep looking at it, remember, and by doing that, you get to your real memories, which, that's cool. I don't know.
I think that's so dope. I think there are so few places in games where the player isn't in, or rather, I think the places in games where the player isn't in full control are usually highly predictable, right? Mm-hmm. We know that we're not in full control in cutscenes, right? Mm-hmm. We know that sometimes, even outside of cutscenes, we don't have, like, dialogue options, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like it's very rare outside of those situations that there are true places where we like the player can't fully make the choice.
Yeah.
And tying the gameplay to blinking, which, like, you do eventually have to blink,
Yep.
is such a fascinating way to play around with player agency in a way that also is really interesting for this sort of storytelling.
Yeah, because ultimately, like, you're gonna get to a memory and you're gonna accidentally blink before you want to.
Yeah.
And you just have to deal with that, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't know. You don't get to see the rest of what happened there or the results of that. You're on to the next one.
I'd like to see a before your eyes speed run. Blink, 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 blink.
Would it work the same? I wonder.
I have no idea.
I don't know.
That's why I'd like to see it. It's like, can you just flutter your eyes through the game in like 5 minutes?
Well, there's certain parts where you have to keep your eyes open, I guess, to progress it. But yeah, for a lot of it, you could probably just blinky blink blink.
I mean, it would be a very boring speedrun, but as long as you had like a camera on the person doing it too.
You can make anything into exciting speedrun.
You're right. But you would have to do it. Here's the terrible idea, and then we'll get back to talking the game. It's like you know the talk shows where it's like you eat the spicy pepper, and then you have to do it. You have to do something similar with like someone's like cutting onions in the room.
That wouldn't be a speedrun though. That'd just help you go faster.
Whatever. Streamer. Good streaming thing.
Good. Yeah, you're right. Streamer challenge.
Anyway, Before Your Eyes started out as it existed even before it was a Kickstarter, in that they made a version of it as titled Close Your, which showed at a bunch of kind of convention-y things and won a few awards, and then was a Kickstarter. Only a Kickstarter for $35,000, which is like, that's not enough. But I think it was because they were just hoping to do a graphics upgrade, because the game did sort of already exist. But yeah, that Kickstarter was in 2017, and the game did not come out obviously until April, so it kind of sat in development hell for a while, I think, and now has finally made it out.
I mean, I get it. It probably took a lot of bug testing to get it to a releasable state.
So Before Your Eyes, as Emma mentioned, and as you can imagine, the eye tracking technology sounds super cool. It would be hard to imagine sustaining that as basically the only gameplay element beyond a few hours of an experiment. Of an experience, I mean, not an experiment. Not to be like, this is a movie, not a game, but a movie-length experience here does feel appropriate. For the story being told, and for how long you can use this as a mechanic without it feeling just kind of like gimmicky. So
I could see maybe integrating like eye stuff with other mechanics.
Well, you save that for the mashup then, why don't ya? Get ready for that.
Especially the blinking, it feels like that would have to be like some sort of short experience.
So overall, the game is typically less than 2 hours long, which has led to, well, at least not to one person on Twitter saying something that allowed the developer to talk about it. But of course, Steam, and the game is also on Epic Games, I think, but they have a similar policy. Steam has a refund policy where you can play as long as you've played a game for less than 2 hours and you've bought it within 2 weeks, you can get a full refund. And, you can imagine how that's a good experience for a larger game.
Yeah.
Right? Games are pricey. They're more tailored to if you don't like a movie, it's only 2 hours long to begin with. It's not like you can't play a movie, right?
Yeah.
Games are so much more individual and whatever. Maybe you believe the game's media doesn't give honest reviews, blah, blah, blah. Or more sympathetically to me, maybe you're worried about trailers having misled you about how finished the game is, or something like that.
Sure.
So, seems like a reasonable policy for games of the length that we often insist that our $60 games are. However, for a game like Before Your Eyes, this is potentially a real problem, because you can play the whole game, you can enjoy the game, and you can decide to refund it because you've only played it for an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And so he actually, I don't think this actually made it to Steam, but he was like teasing that he was going to make a game that was just a 2-hour countdown, and you get an achievement if you stop it in the last 5 seconds. But if not, you can't refund it, and it's $100.
It does kind of feel like it should be like a percentage thing. Maybe.
But that's tough too, right? What is how long to beat number are we using for the percentage here?
I guess so.
Completionist? Right. Most players?
Well, like, I just mean, like, 2 hours seems sufficient for, like, a 30 or 40-hour game, right? In terms of, like, nah, this isn't working, or nah, this feels like it has a lot of bugs in it, or whatever. But maybe for a 2-hour game, you should get, like, 15 minutes or something.
I mean, I agree, but then it comes down to, okay, do the developers self-report that, or how do we figure out what the runtime is?
Right. It would require Steam to have any sort of content filtering system, or, like, checking system, or, like, anything. So, never mind.
Yeah. No, there really isn't. I can't imagine a way of doing that isn't a human at Steam figures out how long the game is.
I guess. I mean, there's no real value to, like, overestimating it, because that just gives players more time to, that just gives players more time to refund it. In terms of underestimating it, I don't know. A human could probably figure that out. Maybe you have to submit a playthrough of it if it's less than 5 hours or something. I don't know.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. But again, someone would have to watch that, and they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So, there you go. But I think the eye camera is really interesting, and especially given that VR has been 5 years away for the past 20 years, I don't know, it's something that I've never seen in a game before, and that starts to think about how we can expand how we engage with, particularly with the kinds of games that people, like, often don't want to call games. Because the thematic resonance of this and the artistic value of this seems much clearer with the eye camera thing than it does if you're clicking with a mouse. But also, don't let Netflix hear about this.
You can get video games free with your existing subscription. This seems like a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm talking about here. It's like, please don't let them... I mean, whatever. I guess if what they want to make is a bunch of eye-tracking games, like, they can do that. That's fine.
I'm just imagining they're going to make a bunch of Bandersnatches and, like, whatever, that's fine, too.
Yeah. No, I mean, if what they're doing is basically somewhere in that space between interactive film and game, I think that's valid. If they want to start calling Bandersnatch really a video game, that's cool.
I think it'll be exhausting to see the film people takes about it, but that's fine.
Whatever. Let Spielberg back in the studio.
Wow, it's a visual novel. Nothing like this has ever been done before.
Oh dear. Well, are you ready to mash up these games? I'm not.
No.
Again, I cannot emphasize enough the amount that Yoko Taro cannot be allowed to start using eye tracking.
I just imagine him, like, having all the powers of, like, a Nintendo DS. You know?
Yeah.
Like the microphone that can like detect when you yell or you're breathing or whatever.
Yeah.
He would have had fun with that too.
That, the PlayStation Eye.
Yeah. Just don't let him near any peripherals.
Absolutely not. But we have to for this. Okay.
Yes.
Alright, so required elements will be eye tracking, probably memory in some way.
Yeah.
I feel like that and the multiple endings is going to go like nicely hand in hand, perhaps.
Yeah.
Has to be inspired by a great American play. Just kidding. It can be a great European play, too.
Sure.
I kid. It doesn't have to be. Has to be strangely inappropriate.
Yep.
Women's character designs must have much more care than the men's.
Yeah. True fact about Drakengard 3. They're like, the male characters, here's some archetypes, whatever, just finish them up. We gotta design our girls about the Madoka Magica character.
Freaking wild. Okay, you definitely have to kill, like, there has to be the game wants you to, it needs to justify the fact that you're killing a lot of people, basically.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's probably an interesting thing here with memory of, like, maybe this is too close to Moon, right, in some idea, but it's not going to be gameplay that way at all. Of, like, you're the hero, and we're going to spend a good portion of the game, with you, like, recounting what you've done to get to this point, only it's kind of the whitewashed hero memory version. And eventually we're gonna get to actually look at what actually happened in the eye tracking memory game.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest, like, maybe you play through the game in, like, your hero perspective, right? And it doesn't even have to be your memory, you can just be, like, going through it.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Presented through your perspective, and then at some point, maybe near the end, there's, like, some sort of reckoning, like you die, or the final boss has some, final boss power or something like that, and then you go back through it again with your eye tracking, and you have to not look away from stuff. Maybe.
I'm thinking the second time through to steal from Automata a little bit. And also so in Drakengard, like, you have the dragon companion, right? So maybe it makes sense that you have some kind of companion thing. Mm-hmm. It's a bird, actually. Like a robo-bird. And so this time, you do it through the eyes of the bird. Doing the eye tracking thing. And you actually see what happened, whereas your hero, like, doesn't look at any of the chaos.
Yeah. You could also just do it with, like, being, like, camera angles, I guess, some sort of thing, where it's initially presented to you so that you're looking at certain parts, and then once you have the eye tracking, you can look. This is more like VR, to be honest, but you can, like, look more around the scene itself, and see anything that perhaps you were purposefully ignoring in your playing through or something.
I'm also interested in the idea of, like, the bird having, like mind reading powers. So perhaps by looking at things as the bird, you get to see the like sympathetic thoughts of the things that you've murdered along the way, or something like that. This really is unfortunately Nier Automata, though, so maybe that's too much.
Yeah, it is just kind of near, to be honest.
Yeah. So that's fine. I'll take that away. I like your camera angles idea of, like, as the bird, you actually have to look around everywhere, and you can see what you've done. I do think we would need to avoid too much actual, like, hack and slash. It would have to be more like, you're like journeying to the castle and, like, opening bridges and stuff. But in doing that, you're, like, crushing things, or, you know what I mean? Like, we have to figure out, at least for some of it, some ways to indirectly cause a lot more death than the hero is able to see. And I don't think hack and slash, you could do some of that, but I think it's going to be too transparent if that's all of it.
Maybe it is both recounting, because that might make it easier to do things without feeling like it's kind of cheap. In terms of, like, the hero is telling their side of the story or whatever, and it's presented to you as their perspective. And then this is just Nier again, but then you do it through the other perspective.
It's fine. Look, I think the eye tracking is fine. I think the idea of, look, there can still be some combat, but, like, it's bloodless. And, like, the things are, like, asking you to kill them. And, like, whatever. Like, we can come up with whatever, like, nice things that justify. Or, you know, the hero's perspective, you know, Han shot first. Or it's not Han shot first. I don't remember who it is in that. You know what I mean.
Is it Boba Fett in that? No.
I can't. This is embarrassing that I can't remember. It's, whatever.
Greedo?
I was thinking it was Greedo, but I'm not 100% sure.
just throw out some Star Wars names. One of them's right, probably. C-3PO shot first?
Stop that. I do feel like there needs to be like, what's the third ending? So, like, the first ending is you get there as the hero and you celebrate. The second ending is we watch it through the bird's point of view and it's bloody and horrible. What happens after that? Is there an opportunity for redemption for this hero, or must it be death? That, I think, is what these games don't agree on. Because there's definitely, like,
Well, your character in Before Your Eyes is a child.
No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to equate those two. I just mean to say, like, there's definitely, like, in Before Your Eyes, even though you're a liar at the beginning, you're able to redeem yourself. Whereas I don't think Drakengard is that generous.
No, Drakengard is very much like, you do bad things, you get a bad ending.
Yeah. I am interested in playing with the idea of, is there a place where the bird loses its sight? Right? And, like, taking away from the player that way.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a choice you get to make at the end, is for the third ending, are you gonna cut out the bird's eyes so you don't have to see what you're really doing? Or are you gonna forge ahead, seeing as the bird?
Sure. Yeah. I was also gonna suggest maybe we just don't. Maybe it's more of like a visual novel type thing, as opposed to anything with combat. So yeah. I think that might make it easier.
Yeah.
To do, for one thing. And also, I don't know what the game would be. If it's hack and slash and it's like, you know, like they look like monsters through one perspective and then they don't through another, that's just Nier. That's just Nier Replicant. So maybe we make it into more of a visual novel thing, and then we can, like, sort of play with what the bad things are more than just, like, it being a hack and slash thing, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And I think there's interesting things to be played with, like, what's done in dialogue with the hero that we actually see with the bird.
Yeah.
And how that storytelling is done. But then I think with visual novel, that actually works really well. That, okay, the part 3, the denouement, is you kind of choose, right? Yeah. Whatever the story of it is, there's some great big evil, like, whatever. The guy in Drakengard is ultimately trying to save the world and, like, get revenge on bad people, right? And he, you know, is also not a good dude. But I think our hero can be doing that too. And we just have to choose at the end as we move toward that big bad or whatever it is. Like, you have to do it. You have to save the world. But do you want to know the cost as you do it or not?
Yeah.
That's a pretty good mashup.
Yeah. It's better than anything I ever expected we would come up with out of this. Because it's just a big fat, like, nope, all the time before this, so.
It's not really inspired by a great American play.
That's
unfortunately.
Fine. And then you turn into a bird. Like the seagull. Like in the Seagull.
To be clear, the Seagull is both not an American play, nor she dies at the end.
Okay.
No, she doesn't. He dies at the end. Oh, shoot. This is embarrassing. I can't remember.
I don't know what the Seagull is about, so you shouldn't be embarrassed. You could tell me it was about anything.
Russians sitting around, some of them who are artists.
Sounds fun. Sounds like a good time.
It is a good time. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
If you liked what you listened to this time, you should follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You should also check out our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games that Emma's about to pull from the hat, and read our blog featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend and Split Screen. Finally, though, if you like the show, the most important thing that you can do is subscribe. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Cast, anywhere you can find podcasts. You can find Talk This at all hours of the day, but particularly on Sundays at noon Eastern. Next week is our 6-week side quest already. Can you believe that? It's the end of July. So we're going to be talking about what we've been playing since mid-June. So expect Emma to have finished The World Ends With You.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
come ready with thoughts. I still haven't decided where I'm going to play it. So we gotta make a choice. But all the headlines about Nomura's drip this week have me shook.
To be fair, the clothes aren't that weird. Minamoto's outfit in the first game is not that out there, to be honest.
Just imagine him. I mean, look, the blonde Nomura pics have me shook at all times. It's just... I just imagine him, like, he looks like Yen Sid to me.
No. No.
He looks like, Ansem the Wise.
Oh my gosh.
Emma, what are we talking about in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks, our old game is going to be Ape Escape.
Dope. How have we not talked about Ape Escape yet?
I don't know. And our new game is going to be Miitopia.
Look at that. The game is just, you make monkeys.
You know what Miitopia's got a lot of? Evangelion influence.
Stop. It could look, your party could look just like that if you wanted it to.
They could, you're right.
There's nothing stopping Miitopia from having Evangelion.
Right, okay. So, I'm gonna go get the demo. My hero is going to be Shinji, and the Dark Lord's going to be the robot. And I'll report back.
Well, look forward to that in 2 weeks, everybody. Thanks for listening. Emma, ready to sign us off?
This week, I hope that you don't... I hope that you blink a normal... I hope that you blink a normal amount.